All right, welcome to Imperial Advisor, episode 5. We're down an Owen this week, who has got better things to do, which, can you blame him, frankly? But fear not, we've got Justin, Baz, and Andy, so we will carry on, and it'll probably be better, and Owen will be super jealous. Guys, please let me back. It could be exactly the same. Right, so basic things we want to sort of cover. It feels like ages ago, but we're going to talk through the lion reveal, which was since our last show. We did play some tabletop simulator games. Me and Baz had a game. So we'll talk about kind of how some of those cards felt to play, which at least for me was a little bit different for how it felt on paper. And then aside from the line, we've got a new dragon card at the start of the dragon previews, and a few cards that have come out today in sort of bits and pieces from the French festival called Paris et Ludique. Paris et Ludique. Which is kind of interesting, and some of it is beta stuff, so some of it could be in flux, but it's worth a chat. We can maybe talk a little bit about the Dragon Fiction, some of the stuff from the L5R Live Facebook chat, and whatever else we sort of meander our way into talking about. Right, so cracking on to Lion. Let's talk conflict cards first, and I think the way we'll do that this week is we'll just sort of give a quick overview of the cards themselves, and then we can pick out any sort of highlights. So there was Guidance of the Ancestors, lets you play attachments from your discard pile, and that's kind of a little theme that sort of sub theme, I guess, for the lion that popped up. Sashimono, attached to a Bushi, character doesn't bow from conflict resolution of military conflicts. The Lion's conflict deck character card is Vengeful Oathkeeper, 2-1 for 2. After you lose a military conflict, put this character into play from your hand.
And then the Master of the Spear was the second one.
Oh, I did. I heard someone talking about that, and I couldn't find that card.
So it's a 3 cost, 2 military, 2 political, 1 glory, Bushi, and the important part is it has an action while this character is attacking your opponent, or as an action while this character is attacking, your opponent must choose participating character he or she controls, move that character home.
Yeah, it's super powerful. Super good card.
Really good. I heard there was some chat about that, and I was looking for it and couldn't find it anywhere. So that's cool. For Greater Glory, a 1 cost event, which after you break a province during military, place 1 fate on each participating Bushi character you control. A little bit of the lion sort of economic advantage there. A 0 cost event, stand your ground. Interrupt when an honored character you control would leave play, discard the character's honored status token instead. And the last one.
Both of those are kind of a theme of keeping your line Bushi who performed well around for later.
Yeah,
and I think Justin made a comment way back, possibly in number 1, that Dragon were manipulating fate, and anything that manipulates the core currency is strong. So I think those are 2 pretty powerful cards to look out for.
Yeah, and there's a couple of when we get into Dynasty, there's a couple of characters that have some pretty strong abilities along those lines too. And the last event is Strength in Numbers. While you're attacking, choose a defending character with less glory than the number of attacking characters and send them home. So Andy, maybe start with you. Since he's played a bit of Lion in his day. What really stands out to you, whether that be the themes or just particular cards that you really like the look of? And obviously there's a few other ones we haven't shown, which we've talked about in the past as well.
Yeah, I think for me the big ones are anything that removes presence from a battle. So the 2-2 for 3, as Baz was explaining earlier, super good for me. Strength in Numbers, also super good for me. Anything that's going to get somebody away from a fight, because I don't think Lion For me, Lion are going to be a lot of small personality or small characters, reasonably squishy, maybe not the most durable in the world. Maybe you don't invest a whole lot in them to begin with. So you just want to get the value out of them up front. And therefore, you just want to be able to you want to break the provinces early, you want to break the provinces often. And cards like, for me, what is the one? For Greater Glory. For Greater Glory is like, I'm a little bit on the fence about this one. I think this is a good card for bad players and a pretty irrelevant card for anyone who's good at the game. I think if you plan out, you can pretty much prize this card out of your deck if there are better tools available for you. This is one card that actually does nothing, in my opinion. It's like the guys, like Baz is saying, we all have said, it provides some sort of economy. And I'm going to make some maybe controversial statements here. But,
Andy? No, surely.
While this does provide free economy, it is not unconditional. Most of the cards that we have seen so far have been somewhat unconditional in the economy that they provide, but this one has a pretty big thing attached to it. You have to break a province, and as we've seen from some of the other province cards, that's not exactly trivial all the time. And I think this is going to be probably a card that maybe is indexed to begin with, and it may seem very powerful, but I think it's going to be a card that is what we would always consider to be a win more card. So if you're already doing well in the game, this one just reinforces the fact that you're gonna win.
I'm not sure I agree with that. Because the thing that came out of sort of the tabletop simulator game we played was Lion are probably going to take a military province almost every turn. Because they're really good at military and they're really good at attacking. But they're insanely weak. But it was really surprising. Okay, obviously we know they're going to be weak politically, but it was surprising how weak they were defending military conflicts. That a lot of their abilities key off being the attacking character. And a lot of times when you think you've got a thing and then you actually read the effing card. And so suddenly, I can say fucking. It's my show. Read the fucking card. And realize, oh no, this doesn't work. This doesn't apply. And so I think the economic advantage of taking a province and with a couple of bushi or 2-3 bushi and getting an extra fate on them is going to be strong.
I do think.
Go on.
I do think Andy is right in that it is a bit of a trap. And there's a YouTube channel, Sloppy Rage. I have no idea why they picked the name, but they're a couple of L5R players who printed out a bunch of stuff and actually videotaped themselves and put up on YouTube a couple of actual games rather than tabletop simulator games. But in the first game they did, one of the approaches that the line player took was get out a bunch of guys, don't pay much fate for them, and then go for that province. And his plan, as he was explaining on the track over it, was to destroy that province, play for Greater Glory, and all of his guys were going to be sticking around next turn. It didn't happen. He won the conflict, but just couldn't get out that extra piece of military force to break the province because the Crane player played a couple of trick cards and his board collapsed, and that single thing essentially lost the game for him.
And that's the thing. I think this card is something that feeds off bad play, and this bad play is overcommitting resources to one location, to one province. And I mean, maybe that's what you're going to do. Maybe that's going to be one strategy. Maybe that will emerge as the right strategy. But for me, at the moment, it doesn't seem like this is going to be a very, very good strategy. Because if you're going to get penalized for not defending, you're not going to want to commit a huge amount of resources to a fight, to an attack, just so that you can have them stick around for an extra turn.
Well, so I'd agree it's a all-in-ish card. I wouldn't agree it's a win more card, I guess, is kind of part of my argument. That I think also the nature of the fate is that win more isn't as prevalent just in the game mechanics naturally.
Well, it's not going to help you win that conflict.
No, but in terms of the game.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Although I will say,
but I mean, it's a one fate. Sorry, go on. It's one fate.
In relation to the win,
You go. I said go on, and I just started talking.
in relation to the win more, when I have my opponent down on the ground, I'm going to kick him in the face a few times. And for Greater Glory certainly does that. So I like that. Win more is not a bad thing. Win more is making sure you keep winning.
Yeah, it's a variance card as well. If you see this card early in the game, like if you get your happy lion rush at the start and you get your 3 or 4 personalities out, I mean, it's also worth bearing in mind. I mean, it costs a single fate, so you need to be applying this to at least 2 personalities or characters before you're making anything out of it whatsoever. But I mean, neither here nor there. But if you get a couple of them early, then on your first attack you can play this and you preserve your board for a further turn. If you manage to do it on the second attack and you get to again and preserve your board again, that means on turns 3 and 4 you should have an enormous board, absolutely enormous.
Now, go on, Justin.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying that I mean that. I kind of agree that I'm not as high on this card as it seems like. I mean, it's an economy card, so I should be high on this card, but I'm not. I'm kind of with Andy in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I know. Stop the press. But in another way, I can certainly see variant situations where a couple of this card, like 2 of this card in the first couple of conflicts, could present an almost insurmountable board for an opponent in turns 3 to 4, where the lion player simply has, I mean, it could give rise to a lion board of 7 or 8 personalities that will be hanging around to turn 4 and beyond. And I mean, that just gives the lion player a huge amount of flexibility in dictating the terms of engagement. And given that I also expect lion players to be taking military province almost like clockwork every single turn, it presents a huge board problem that has to be solved by an opponent if they're going to keep themselves in the game. And that's where I see this card being unfair, is that if you get the early multiples, that could be an issue. But apart from that, I'm not wrong.
The biggest strength and the greatest weakness of this card is that dream scenario where you get a ton of Bushi and you go over with everything. And I think people who are saying it's great are imagining this perfect scenario, and people who are thinking it's terrible are probably imagining that same scenario because it's really an eggs in one basket kind of one. But even when you just have one character and you're attacking with it, you could have made it 2 turns before and you're about to lose them. Paying the 1 after you get your Greater Glory just gives them 1 fate, but it's 1 fate that you wouldn't have a way to add to them otherwise. So I think the scenarios where you're adding 1 or 2 or maybe 3 fates are really where it's at, rather than that dream scenario where you're adding 5 or 6. I think anytime you're going into a conflict thinking, I think any conflict you're going in going, all right, the plan is Greater Glory, and then that's it. That's a mistake. I think you want to be going in going, oh, I've won this. All right, well, I've got fate left, I've got Greater Glory. Bing.
That's the really obvious and really bad play that I was talking about. So a good card for bad players is what I would call this one. But on the opposites, on the flip side of that, I look at Stand Your Ground, and I think this is a card that is a much, much better card. That from everyone or just Andy? Oh,
just Sparks was talking about some of the reverb.
Yeah. Just Andy. Oh no. Oh, maybe I'll
I think your minimalist room is a little bit reverby in general, but
all right. Hold on a sec. I'll try and fix this.
all the walls will start moving in the background as he makes that.
Is that any better or is it worse?
Probably a bit better. Being closer to the mic should help in general.
All right. I'll try and do this then. So yeah, what I was saying, he needs a green screen to cut out the echoes. It's true.
Green screen yourself into like a boudoir with loads of cushions.
Stand Your Ground, I think, is a much, much better card. I think it's a much better card for, number one, it's 0 fate cost. And I think it's a much more surprise play. You don't have to telegraph it as much. This is the card Interrupt. When an honored character you control would leave play, instead discard that character's status token. I think this is it's a fairly negligible cost from what I've seen from the way Lion have the ability to honor their characters. I think it should be a fairly negligible condition. And that status token, unless you're playing against Dishonor, I think is going to be able to stick around for quite a long time. And the flexibility of this card, it can be when your card runs out, your character runs out of fate naturally at the end of a turn. You can have him stick around for another turn, which is kind of massive, I would say. It could be a massive swing if that character has attachments on him. But in general, I think it's a much, much better card because it can be used in reaction to an opponent's action. It can be used in response to anything, basically.
Yeah,
I think this is an amazing card.
I think zero cost cards are just that they're inherently so much better because of what they allow you to do in your dynasty phase, and the fact that it's less. It's going to be less easy for your opponent to see it coming. Whereas when you're playing against an opponent who's got one or two fate, on the table during a conflict, or frankly, any time, you have to be aware of a lot more things. And so I think that, as Owen's point, a zero cost event always deserves a second look. And this is definitely strong.
Another thing that I quite liked from what I saw from the Lion cards was I do kind of like the guidance of the ancestors, in just that it can give you that little bit of extra beef for when you can do some kind of unexpected things. You can throw like a small character into a province, and with the cost of maybe one or two cards, Lion can turn a very small character into a very, very large character. Because Way of the Lion, I think, was also one that we've seen, which doubles the stats on a card. Am I right in saying that?
Increases base strength, but yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Increases base. Okay, sorry. Then that was my misreading, my classic misreading of this. But anyhow, in any case, I think the attachment is quite good for giving you that, because you can attach it as an action in a fight, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would say this is some unexpected force, some unexpected military or political force, which I quite like for the low cost of 1.
Yeah, something I found with this card is it can be hard to have enough time, given the length of games and the number of turns that they take. You need to have the fate to play this card, have that character leave play, and then play it again. Is that getting the value from it takes quite a few turns of the game?
It might be a card that we should be considering with like Night Ambush and things like that. So cases where we have to choose a card to discard, so we'll discard Guidance of the Ancestors, and then we can just pick it up out of the discard pile when we need it.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what other kind of discard options are in there. That might make it more useful. But I would say the same, that cards that where you're playing them and getting to play them again aren't seen quite as useful, partially because of the cost. I think if it was free, you'd love it. But notable for this one, unlike the weapons, you're not limited to 2, so you can drop 3 Guidance of the Ancestors and then another 2 weapons on top for that big mega unit.
I mean, and another aspect of it is it gives one political, which could be quite precious in Lion, maybe just having one guy who could just scrape through a political conflict to get, at some point in a game, 2 provinces. Because,
or more importantly, it'll take your Matsu Brawler out of that 2 political level, which is bowable by the Crane Stronghold. So you might be just dropping a point here, dropping a point there, and all of a sudden you're immune to it.
For me, it's just a card that you can establish a presence in a fight with it. You can't really do much with it, but for 1 fate, I think it allows you to contest, and I think that's going to be very, very important.
Yeah. Okay, I think might move on to the Dynasty cards. So we'll start with the Big Daddy, Kodo Toturi. A sort of a mirror to Hataru in the military sense, are a very similar sort of design of the ability itself. Como Iji, a courtier with 3 politics, 3 glory. Again, another keying off losing conflict, this time on the political, but lets you play a Bushi character with cost 3 or lower into play from your dynasty discard pile or your provinces. Kitsu Spirit Caller, 3 cost Shugenja, who during a conflict, this character, choose a character in a discard pile, either one, put that character into play in the conflict. If it's still in play at the end of the conflict, it goes back to the bottom of your deck. Matsu Bayona. After this character enters play, if you control 3 or more other Bushi, place 2 fate on this character. 3/2 for 3. But a little bit of that sort of economical advantage potentially. Obstinate Recruit, 0 cost character, always worth a second look. If your opponent is more honorable than you, discard this character. Venerable Historian, the dash 1 courtier. While this character is participating in a conflict, if you're more honorable than your opponent, honor this character. And then wrapping up with the province, the Art of War, for 3 strength. When the province is broken, draw 3 cards. So a bit of card draw to help with their honor and honor flow. So that's kind of a quick overview. Justin, what sort of stands out for you from their sort of caster characters?
I think the one that stands out most for me is probably the Kitsu Spirit Caller. I think that is the most. I mean, obviously, okay. Taturi, obviously, the champion is going to be a big deal, but he is effectively the mirror of the Crane champion. We know how good she is. I expect Taturi to be exactly as good. Although, actually, I would think maybe Taturi is slightly worse. Because the Lion do seem so significantly weaker at political battles than the Cranes seem at military. So I'm not sure. Again, I think I'd need to see. I think I need to see him play more games with both factions to get a proper idea of the relative strengths. But it might be that Taturi is just a shade weaker purely because it just seems harder to be good at political conflicts than it does at military conflicts right now. So that's it. Anyway, but yeah, the Kitsu Spirit Caller is the one that seems the best to me, simply because if you're looking to close out the game, if you've got Taturi in your bin, well, you've got Taturi on the board, which is tremendous. Yeah, it's just tremendously powerful, and for a very reasonable cost. I mean, I suppose the immediate comparison is Ikoma Eiji, who costs 4, as opposed to the 3, and we've seen already in games that that there is a genuinely huge difference between something that costs 3 and something that costs 4. And as well as that, Ikoma Eiji is conditional.
Yeah.
So not only have you got a more expensive character, you've got a character that requires something specific to happen on the board.
Something pretty detrimental to happen as well. I mean, that's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. And the thing is that like a clever opponent, I mean, this depends very much on initiative order as well, because if you are the first player, then a clever opponent is going to wait until their last challenge to initiate a political challenge against you. I mean, I suppose you could run in and you could lose a political challenge yourself as your first challenge. I'm not sure. I suppose that depends very much on board state. But in situations where you're going first, an opponent will wait until their last challenge to create this, which means that effectively he doesn't do anything for you because you can't put fate on characters that are being brought into play through actions. So that personality will be in the bin again.
So there are some tricks with him.
Are there?
Yeah. So I mean that one where you're talking about attacking with that political attack and then losing.
Yeah.
If you throw a Death Seeker into that political attack and you lose it, it looks like you might be able to discard the Death Seeker to trigger its ability, then use Eiji to get Death Seeker back and have him around for later.
Oh, that is sick.
And then
that'd be pretty good.
The other one is with Fiona, because Fiona has a triggered ability when she comes into play. She'll be able to get those fate tokens and will stick around. And Eiji doesn't have the stick them back to the bottom of the deck like the Kitsu Spirit Caller do.
And don't forget, there's For Greater Glory, right?
Yeah,
this is true. But even so, I think the fact that it's 4, like the 4 cost is a really big deal for me. I mean, and the stats for 4. I mean, for 4, you're getting a 1/3.
I totally
which
agree.
is
It's
which
not
is
value.
which is not it's not good to start with. I mean, if you can honor him, he's significantly better, obviously. But he's just.
I'm gonna differ with you because I don't think he's
okay.
4 cost 1/3. I think he's a 4 cost 1/3 and an additional character. You do have to lose a political, but that's not particularly hard. He doesn't vow to use his effect. He can take from the discard or from provinces. And that 3 glory is pretty amazing if you can get him honored. Now, it is a liability if he gets dishonored. The Kitsu Spirit Caller is great because you can leave it outside of the battle. And when you want it, you drop it in. And the rest of the time, you can have it ready for that political attack or political defense that you want.
Yeah.
EG doubles up. He can be there as well. But, I understand your reservations. I think they're both fantastic characters.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's like I haven't played with a. I don't really know, but is it just on first blush? Just there are so many conditionalities that you have to meet, and it could just be the hardcore CCG or like anything conditional makes me wary at the very least.
I think I'm on the same side as Justin on this one. Until I see a bit more from the design, a bit more from this path of where they're going with this design, because I think in a set or two, this could be very, very powerful. The fact that they're using all this necromancy type stuff, bringing people back from the dead, bringing discard piles into it, like being able to recycle so much of your discard pile means that maybe there's an attrition deck there.
X-ray on the necromancy. It's totally ancestor worship. That's totally different.
Ancestors. My bad. But I think there could be something there, and the fact that you're gaining tempo every time you lose something. So you're losing something because you lost a political conflict. You obviously probably lost the use of a ring there as well, potentially, probably. So I'm guessing you're probably going to generate. It's going to at least try to put you on parity in terms of tempo with what your opponent's doing, or allowing you to get that extra little bit of push in your own turn. I don't know. I think he's got not much now, but maybe a lot of value later when there are more cards to support these kind of mechanics.
What do you think in general about the sort of when you lose a conflict theme that kind of is again another sub-theme of Lion? I mean, we talked about win more. Is this slightly lose more?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked before about. I mean, this is a game in which acceptable losses is a completely viable tactical consideration. I mean, there are times when you will be going into a conflict knowing you're going to lose, but that's absolutely fine because you can achieve greater strategic objectives within that loss, despite what it costs you. So, I mean, I don't see it as a necessarily enormous detriment, but for things like AG, it's a condition you have to meet, and cards like that always seem better in a vacuum when frequently on the board, just given the situation of the board and the game state. A lot of the time, you are being put into a position where you have to make a significantly suboptimal play in order to justify having, paid 4 or 5 or 6 fate and brought the guy into play. And those are cards that I would always be wary about because, I mean, it's a very human thing to want to be consistent and to justify your situation. And frequently, it's very easy to dupe yourself into believing that, making a substandard play to justify the purchase of a Coma AG is necessary. Otherwise, you look like an idiot for having paid for having paid from in the first place. So cards like that are always cards to be really. I mean, they're big skill test cards, but you just need to be aware very much, and not to throw good money after bad with cards like that.
And that's actually that's a really nice comment, because I think that kind of comes from poker. I've heard that in terms of poker before, throwing.
Yeah.
And this game seems like the calculations necessary to get value out of the plays that you make in this game seem a lot like a poker game to me. It's like calculating. It's almost like an economic problem, a microeconomic problem, that you just have to make the most efficient choices at all times, and it boils down to a mathematical equation of how much fate you're putting into everything, how much value you're getting out of the fate that you're investing. I mean, it's a lot more mathematically driven than I think the old L5R was.
And just to add to that, I've seen comments from a few people who've been sitting down and actually getting some games in with the cards we've seen so far. And the more experienced players seem to be saying that you need to stop talking about these cards in a vacuum. You need to stop going, well, this card is great, or this one is 5 stars, or whatever. Look at the board state. See what's on the table. See what your opponent has in their dynasty, what you have in your provinces, and then work out how you're going to start winning things this turn and what impact that's going to have. And only then think about what you're making and what you're investing. So, yeah, I mean, it's... Yeah, well, I think, as Justin was saying, it's a lot to do with the situation you're in. If you're up against, say, a Unicorn player who has very little political, and you've got a bunch of courtiers, EG is never going to trigger. So, yeah, he is going to be an overcosted 1-3 with 3 glory. But it's all about understanding the board state.
Something to be said from though is he is unique, and that gives the character a little bit of a bump in any sort of rating. I think that he can. There's going to be times when he just gets a free fate on him because you run well at your provinces. Sorry, Andy, I cut you off there. You were going to say something.
No, it's totally fine. I've forgotten what I was going to say, so that's probably best for everyone.
Okay, and I think the other interesting card is the Obstinate Recruit for me, because again, it's a 0 cost 2/0. It looks like it should be completely amazing, but there are enough hidden catches in this card that it is not necessarily good all the time. So, for example, if you are not the first player, if your opponent is the first player, and your opponent is Crane or within 1 honor of you, this is a really bad card, because you will put this on the board and your opponent will go, I declare an air politics conflict. Whoop, Obstinate Recruit off the board straight away.
Even before that, it super restricts your ability to bid. We talked about, military decks will want to bid high early. You can't do that if you make your Obstinate Recruit first turn. As I learned when I played Baz and lost my Obstinate Recruit first turn.
Did you put any fate on it?
No, I didn't. It was...
oh, that's okay. That's fine.
It was...
but
controlled my losses.
So, it's just, again, I suppose it's one of those things, like in old L5R, any personality that cost 0 gold was basically broken. A 0/1 that cost 0 gold was a broken personality. And this is not the case with this guy. There are times, if you're playing against lower honor clans, we haven't seen the low honor clans like Crab and Scorpion yet. So there may be a big enough delta in starting honor there that this is actually really good against those clans. But against the higher honor clans, he's a bit of a risk. There are a lot of restrictions, hidden restrictions that come with him. So yeah, he's potentially good, but not always. So you need to be careful with him.
I think that if you're building him for 0, it does limit your downside.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to be a little bit embarrassed, but it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah, if the most you expect from him is a 2 force pump for 1 turn, then you're probably going to be happy. But is a possible 2 force pump for 1 turn worth the dynasty slot? That's a bigger question. So.
Yeah.
With the cards that line have that allow you to recycle or refill dynasty provinces after you've purchased, could potentially just be a free slot, just a deck thinner.
Yeah. You just throw them out. Yeah. Absolutely. So
if you get that tempo.
Yeah, but he's quite for something apparently so simple. He's quite a complex little card. So. Yeah, and apart from that, I suppose there's Matsubiona, who is dumb stats, but she is, I'm not sure, a 2 political strength Bushi, which is not insignificant in Lion. That's actually quite a big deal. 3 costs, you would really want to be getting the additional 2 fate to justify that. When you take a look at something as powerful as Lion's Pride Brawler in comparison, losing that action Enterprise Brawler is such a big deal for the same cost. So yeah, I wouldn't be madly thrilled about Matsu Bayona, but that said, it's just, it just adds to the table, and it creates just force through bodies. It's something that has to be taken into consideration on him. So it could be okay.
It seems to me there's a lot of kind of value cards where, if I maybe this is true actually, or not just Lion, but it's something that's kind of thematic in the game. If you can engineer the right situation, then you can get a lot of value from the cards. But there's cards that it can be that if you don't have the right situation, you don't get much value from them, and you're kind of overpaying if the setup isn't right for playing them. Thoughts? No.
I mean, it's always going to be the case.
Is that just a truism?
I think it's just going to be one of the base fundamental things of this game. It's going to be how you invest in the short term and how you plan for the long term. For me, that was one of the comments I was going to make earlier that I actually forgot. I'm wondering how much into the future you can possibly plan in this game, because you make a lot of short-term investments, and the game doesn't last very long to begin with. From what Baz was saying, from what other players are experiencing, planning for the current turn is about the max that you should be looking at. Well, it seems like it's about the max that you should be looking at. Anything longer term than that is getting very, very risky in terms of what you're dedicating in terms of resources.
Yeah, I think you're planning for this turn, and if you're feeling confident, then you're starting to invest those resources in further turns. But there is a bit of a gamble involved in that. Now, obviously, if you bet it all on this turn, and that's turn one, your turn two is going to be from scratch, which will be really, really tricky. But yeah, I think one of the mistakes I think I was making at the start, and some other players corrected me, I think I was using turn one as a build turn, rather than going straight into the game and trying to win those conflicts and try to get stuff done turn one. I was overly focusing on just what essentially was, make a holding. But really what I needed to be doing was getting stuff out and not being afraid of making a couple of cheap characters with no fate on them. They're there to win this turn, and that's it.
Yeah.
Especially because it's a quarter of the game. You're probably seeing 4 or 5 turns, so each turn is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wonder, before we talk about some of the new bits, we can sort of maybe dive into some of that sort of tabletop simulator gameplay and sort of our thoughts from that. So me and Baz played a game. I played Lion, Baz played Crane, and we also had Evil GM John sort of alongside us, giving a little bit of a sort of extra discussion, which was great. So yeah, and basically how that played out was Lion kind of basically took a military province each turn, and the game shifted on a couple of things. One, the Crane managed to take 2 back at one point, essentially in part because Banzai is just, you can have any guy take a province with Banzai, and I get the impression that overall that Crane are probably better at military than Lion are political, and I think that's going to be true of a lot of a political clan, because there's just a lot of cheap pumps of military skill. And then it's sort of one thing that really flipped was I got to Turi out, which sort of put me in a really good position to sort of hold Baz off and get to a decisive battle. Oops, someone's gone. I think Andy's got some background noise.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's just something outside the window. But the what's it called? What's the province, Baz?
Which one?
The one that flips the ring type.
Elemental something.
Elemental Fury, and that going off basically killed an attack that was going to let me bow to people with Water Ring, and possibly win the game. So it was pretty tight. Overall, my thoughts on Lion was as I said earlier, struggling with political and defensive attacks. I ended up just with the kind of conflict cards that weren't terribly useful because I wasn't, unless I was attacking, and because Crane were just essentially letting me take those military conflicts on the attack. You're just like, oh, I've got these cards that if you want to take a fight, I've got all these things I can do, but without taking a fight, they're kind of useless. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that are unique to that matchup, and if it was a lion dragon game, a lion crab, lion unicorn, where there's a bit more military back and forth, it could play differently. And also, I mean, you can't read too much into a single game as well, because just the way you draw is always going to affect that hugely.
So in retrospect, looking back at those games and looking at some of the games that other people across the community have played, I think we've been playing this all wrong. We're looking at all the line military cards and we're going, wow, this is awesome. Let's get some Bushi out there. Let's get some Death Seekers, Berserkers. Let's go crush some provinces. And all we've ended up doing is leaving the Crane, who just by virtue of the kind of makeup that they have had a slightly better balance of political and military. So they were able, at some point, to take 2 provinces during a single turn. I don't think it's just down to Bonsai, but Bonsai is certainly a factor. Now, looking back through the cards, Steadfast Samurai is as good a political character as he is a military character. The Venerable Historian is a really fantastic courtier. So it's a 2-cost, zip 1. It's a courtier, it's got 3 glory, and it's got an ability that honors itself when you're the most honorable player. So essentially it is a 4 political character for 2, and it's a courtier. You can see the Kitsu Spirit Caller has 3 political. The Lion's Pride Brawler is only 2 political, but does have that fantastic ability that can bow anyone with less, equal or less military than they have. We've talked about EG a little bit. When attacking. And EG is another courtier. So, I mean, they've actually got a decent selection of courtiers in there, and they do have a decent selection of political stats. I think we've just been partially because it's Lion, we're looking at the military side, and we're kind of expecting it to play one way. But also, on the other hand, as kind of earlier players, we're looking at the first number that's in red, and we're going, yeah, that's great. And we're looking at the second number and like, well, that's chi. That's for dueling and attaching spells and stuff like that. So we might be undervaluing that slightly. I think there is quite a strong political deck that is based on courtiers, primarily out of the Lion side. And rather than putting in all your amazing military cards, you're relying on how great the Lion are at military anyway. So you're ending up with a slightly bit better balance by focusing down the political route and trying to get those political characters out. We've also recently seen spoiled another courtier character. So it's the Akoma Youth. Or no, the Akoma Prodigy?
Yeah, I think so. It was said Akoma Youth on the card, but it's been called Akoma Prodigy elsewhere.
Yeah. So and we'll mention this a little bit more in a second. Or if we haven't already, in France there were a couple of spoilers that came out. Because one of the events had a beta test. But that's a 1-cost, 0 military, 2 political courtier with 1 glory and a reaction that says after 1 or more fate is placed on this character, gain 1 honor. That is another fantastic political and courtier character that really rounds out the courtier deck for the Lion clan. So I think maybe we've just been playing it all wrong. We need to go back to the drawing board, and rather than going with the tactic that we've been talking about previously of just consistently taking a military province every time, try to get maybe a bit more of a balanced board, or if not completely balanced, a better chunk of political, so the deck is able to compete and able to take provinces and able to defend on the political side.
Well, I think if you're an aggressive deck and you're only focusing on military in your attacks, then you're only getting 50% of the possible momentum that you could be getting.
Yep.
Because you're completely ignoring being aggressive on a political side. Now, of course, you're going to want to keep something in reserve maybe to defend on the political side, but if you're going pure military, if you're going to go with a pure military deck, you're not going to be able to do that in any case. So you're kind of not losing anything, but you're gaining the potential. If you splash the courier cards, that have synergy with your normal cards anyway, from what we've seen, you're going to have not only the ability to defend, but you're also going to be able to push the attack and maybe take 2 yourself in one turn, 2 provinces yourself in one turn.
Yeah, I mean, when you sort of zoom out and look at the games that are sort of really high level, a lot of it's going to come down to, most people are going to be able to take a province on their turn, one province. The ability to take 2 on your turn really gives you a big advantage in the overall scheme. It makes the other person have to sort of really think about how they're either going to take 2 or how they're going to stop you from taking 2. Because otherwise, if there's just sort of back and forth, the person who's taken 2 is going to win the game. So, I think it's interesting to see how I think all clans are going to need to strive for some degree of balance. I think obviously if a clan is naturally more biased, more extremely biased towards one type of victory condition, there's a higher risk that they're just going to draw, not enough of the other type of cards to allow them to play balanced.
I mean, playing balanced requires tons of resources. It means you need equal amounts of everything. So, and I'm not sure that actually conflict deck wise, that plays into Lion's necessity for being honorable and having honor.
Yeah, I mean, when I know about it, it means, at least just be able to threaten taking, to be able to threaten take a province of the other type, really,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't feel it's a sacrifice. I think those courtier cards are very, very good.
Yeah, don't disagree. Any other thoughts from that game that sort of stood out for you, Baz? I mean, I think we saw that Elemental Fury is not just sort of a deck filling province that's taking a slot. It really swung the game. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I thought we had a kind of nice discussion for about 5 minutes on that board state where we were like, here's what we could do. If we attack with these guys, what'll happen? And I thought that was quite interesting because there were options, there were choices, and at the end of the day, there was a right choice that you made, and then a random card that made a mess of it, which was a lot of fun.
Which to reference poker, I think the thing poker teaches you, more so than almost any game, is that the outcome, having a bad outcome doesn't mean you made a bad decision. I think that's a great lesson for anyone who plays games of any sort, is that you can make the right decision, play everything right, and just have cards go the wrong way, and it's still
I'm sorry, Colm, you've got to make your own luck.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, so let's jump on and talk about some of these cards that we've seen elsewhere. So we've talked about Akuma Youth, so we can jump on from that. Miramoto's Fury. So Baz, maybe you can talk about this. It's a 1-cost event. During a conflict, choose an attacking character with glory of X or lower, bar that character. X is equal to the number of unrevealed provinces you control.
This kind of fits a template. We've seen the Crane have admit defeat. We've seen Lion have strength in numbers, and this seems to be following a rough pattern to that. So it's 1 cost, as are all the others. It's got some sort of condition. So in this case, it's when you're defending. So choose an attacking character. In the other 2 cases, they were both ones where you're the attacker and you're targeting a defender. So this one is possibly one of the first defensive actions we've seen. Then there's some sort of targeting restriction. In this case, it's glory equal to or lower the number of unrevealed provinces you have. So at the first opportunity you're going to be targeting someone with glory 4 or less, because you've got the full 5 provinces. Absolute worst case scenario, and this is where your opponent has hit into a couple of provinces but hasn't taken them, so they've revealed all 4 of your non-stronghold provinces, and now they're attacking your stronghold. you can still use it to target a 0 glory character. So it's always going to be useful. There's always going to be a target for it. And the kind of last detail is that it
Justin is gurning in the background.
Well, yeah, we'll see. So
I don't think there's necessarily always going to be a target for a Baz.
yeah, no, that's fair. So
in most situations, yes. But just you gotta be aware of those absolute statements.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair. Yeah,
Speaking of the internet, there's got to be that commenter on YouTube.
It's
all right, pretty much all
forever bad.
You're right. You're technically correct, Justin. The best kind of correct. But this does look like to be a kind of a very, very useful card. The one cost is tricky, but that's the same for all these. Now, interestingly, some of the 3 cards I mentioned bow and some send home. Bow is really good for stopping a character being present again. So once they're bowed, they're not contributing their force for this conflict, and they're not able to assign to another conflict unless they can straighten somehow. But they can still use their abilities, because having a character bowed doesn't stop them using the ability unless it's a cost of it. And in this case, it does bow them, so this seems to be a very defensive action. You don't need presence, so you just have that fate left over. You can drop this, possibly saving a province. I think it's really good. I like it. Again, we've talked about how important 0 cost events are, and because you're defending in this case, you'll have missed the opportunity to grab a fate. So a lot of the time, the attacker has been able to pick up a fate from one of the rings, and because of that, are able to use a few more actions. So I think that one worries me, but yeah, I think it's a really good card. I like it a lot. Only 2 influence cost. So it is splashable if people wish to, but not as easily splashed as a 1 cost or 1 influence.
Would I be right in saying that this card gets worse the longer the game goes on?
Yes.
Right. So when this becomes really important to have battle actions that have a meaningful impact, this card is very unreliable.
Yes, but because it's incredibly reliable at the very start, you may never get in that situation. Because if you're able to stop that first province being taken, that means it'll be an extra turn, or it'll be an extra conflict type before they could do it. As we talked about, you've got a limited number of conflicts. As an aggressive player, you've got a limited number of opportunities to actually take provinces and get ahead. And something like this could set someone back a big amount.
And interestingly, a defensive card for Dragon, which is kind of maybe not what we expected to be a strength of theirs.
I'm not so sure.
Dragon were always defensive.
Yeah, Dragon are pretty passive
back in
aggressive.
the good old days.
They've got mountains.
Province strength for every destroyed province.
Yeah. No one ever knew what the Dragon were supposed to do, so that's yeah.
Yeah. Just climb higher up the mountain. but there is kind of just a riff on the original Dragon Stronghold on this, because it does have to do with provinces and things getting better or worse. I don't know.
It needs more mountain tokens. That's all.
It does.
More mountain tokens.
Absolutely.
The Earth ring token looks a bit like a mountain, though.
Yes, it does.
There you go.
And the other Dragon card we've seen recently coming out is Indomitable Will, which is it's a 1 cost event, and it's a reaction after you win a conflict in which you control only a single participating character. That character does not bow as a result of the conflict's resolution. So this is good. This is like a spearhead from the old game. You don't have to use it until after you win the conflict, which is great. If you lose a conflict, you don't get to play it. It's kind of like the Sashi Mono that we saw for the line. It does cost 1. But the flip side of it is you're going to have that character to use it again in that same conflict. So essentially you're paying 1 to get a second copy of that character that just was involved in that. Now, the limitation is that they were the only participating character, or the only one you controlled. So that does limit it a little bit. But, we have seen from a few of the games that the numbers are pretty tight. Normally, we've seen people attacking with kind of 2 or 3. I wouldn't be shocked for Dragon to be doing a lot of attacking and defending with just 1 character.
Yeah, we saw Miramoto Prodigy keying off being alone, and we know there's a theme of attachments there as well, so that potentially favors a bit of sultry conflict as well. And then there's a few neutral things we've seen from France. So one was some of these are kind of blurry. I think they're taken from sort of photos of tables. So Imperial Storehouse, a 1 strength holding, which is neutral. Action sacrifices holding, draw 1 card. So I guess a little bit of card draw.
I think it looks good.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah. I think it looks kind of stable.
Yeah. For one
At
fate,
least in the early running.
for sure.
At least in the early running.
1 fate for 1 card. I'll take it every time.
It's not even a fate. It's just,
it's free.
your dynasty slot.
Oh shit! Yeah. Sorry, I'm not reading that right. Yeah, for sure.
It's just gonna cycle through thinner deck a little bit, maybe. And we've seen cards that can refill provinces that are not necessarily in short supply.
And I mean, you rarely produce all 4 of your provinces, so it will limit your options slightly just by being there. But it's always useful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of the decks that I've been seeing so far. I mean, this is kind of why I took I had a little bit of a face for that the dragon card that stops you from bowing. Indomitable Will, is it?
I can't say it either. So
I'm a little bit apprehensive about cards like that cost 1 fate, only produce 1 effect, and cost your card from your hand, especially for a mid to high honor clan. The cost of getting a card back, a fate card or a conflict card back in your hand, is, for me, not insignificant at this point in time, from my very naive view of the game. So anything that regenerates cards into your hand for a very, very low cost, or for essentially nothing in this case, is massive and makes cards like that maybe a little bit more worth playing at this point in the game.
Yeah. So a couple others that I've seen from I think the L5R Europe Discord channel. These were just posted, so I haven't seen any images or card art. So, but no reason to think people are making this up. But Sheppard Guardsman, a neutral character, 1 of fate, 2 military - politics. This character cannot participate in conflict as an attacker against a player that controls the Imperial favor. And the other one, neutral fan and neutral attachment, 0 fate, 2 politics. Just seems strong. A kind of political equivalent of Fine Katana.
I haven't seen that one. That sounds very.
That'll go in line. I would put that in the line deck.
I think that'll go in.
I would
every
deck.
Yeah.
Political boosts are just in such short supply, and it's zero fate.
Sheppard Guardsman will go in no decks because that card looks terrible.
Sure, that looks awful. That was almost as bad as that Lion Death Seeker.
I mean, he's a mirror of the Otomo Courtier, so yeah, I guess. I mean, for the starting, they're probably good filler characters.
I mean, you may find yourself, certainly for the release tournament. Yeah, for the release tournament, you may have to play it. Have to. But as soon as you don't have to play it, oof. But Onnotangu fan is amazing. That looks like just a staple 3 of. At least in the early.
Agreed. There was some chatter in the chat earlier about Ornate Fan, that it was basically just why play the 1/1 for Lion, the +1/+1 for 1 fate item over Ornate Fan, and it's it's a valid argument. I mean, are you going to invest in the short term, or are you going to get that card that can come back? Actually, this is 0 fate, so absolutely, it's
So no,
it's a lot over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you play Guidance of the Ancestors because you've already put 3 of Fine Katana and 3 Ornate Fans into your deck, and you've got another 34 cards to put in. So
yeah. 34 filler cards, you know.
Just the rest is just card draw to get to those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just deck thinning and just some characters in your conflict deck, and that's it.
Because I mean, if you compare it to the Obstinate Recruit, even the Fine Katana, which I guess is a closer comparison, it's going to stick around for longer, but you're putting all your eggs into a basket. But it doesn't magically disappear just because you accidentally drop some marshmallows or something.
All right, and then there's a little bit of stuff from rulebook. So there was a little bit of information about some keywords that we haven't seen before. So courtesy, when this card leaves play, its controller gains 1 fate, and covert, when this character is declared as an attacker, you may choose a character that doesn't have covert. That character cannot be declared as a defender for this conflict.
Whoa.
So a covert character basically gets to stop someone from defending.
Game of Thrones.
I assume they're putting the covert trait in, but I don't believe there's any cards that will ever exist that will have it.
Certainly not in.
I can't see that being a good mechanic going forward. That covert is just in the hands of a good player. That mechanic is just so punishing.
It just depends on the statting, the personalities relative to. I mean, it's on like guys that are 1/2, or I mean, if it's like 2/2's the cost 3, then it's probably a lot fairer than it looks.
There's going to be a lot of ninjas with ornate fans shouting Banzai.
No, I'm not sure about that. I'd always say the exact opposite. Like, a cheap guy that has got covert takes out your big guy.
Yeah, that's super unfair. Unless they cost it really restrictively.
Hataru's not coming to court today.
It depends on the relative cost of what like if you've got a 3 fate 2/2, those are terrible stats. So I mean, the thing is, but I mean, like, a covert character can't defend against this, but he can still attack and defend against another one, defend against another challenge. So I don't think it's quite as. I mean, obviously, it's it's stealth from Game of Thrones, but it's clear it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's clearly good, and there are games that you will lose on the basis of your opponent having covert characters on the other side of the board. But that said,
there are still 4 conflicts, and if it said covert bow target character, that would be much better. But we've actually seen a 3 we've seen characters with bow effects and send home effects. Yeah, okay, I could calm down a little bit. But I'm very excited. I really like this idea.
Yeah.
No, it's but I mean, the Lions Pride Brawler is, again, like if we're taking like our 3 fate 2/2, if we're just pulling that out of our backside, the Lions Pride Brawler is arguably a better personality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it depends very much on on the stats of the personality that they come on, and whether those parties have super punishing abilities, because you can be guaranteed that there's going to be at least one super ninja who will be absolute murder. But yeah, it's I don't think it's as powerful as it necessarily looks at first blush, but it's still going to be a good keyword that will probably make you feel really bad at times. Courtesy is amazing.
Courtesy is great. Courtesy, I mean, that's free economy. Just regaining economy. It's just really good. Really good.
Yeah. I mean, there are times you may consider, like, here's a courtesy character, but I'm just not going to put any fate in them.
Yeah,
so,
just fuck that.
You go, get your fate back.
Free fate.
No, it's just, they're both really strong. They're good.
Okay, and then we had a little page of a rulebook, which a lot of it sort of just confirmed what we know about deck building and influence, how provinces work, things like that. I I guess what was kind of interesting from that was these role cards that we saw sort of leaked from a contents list before. It sort of elaborates a little bit on that. Can't read that because it's too small, but essentially says these sit alongside your province and modify your stronghold and modify.
Yeah, so it says a role card is placed next to the player's stronghold card during setup and modifies the player's options while building and playing the deck.
So they're sensites, effectively,
Yes.
from old L5R.
So,
But I mean, but they
exist.
They exist in Game of Thrones as well. You have I've forgotten what they're called in Game of Thrones. Not banners.
Banners,
There are other ones.
No? Okay.
No, agendas. They're the same. I think they'll just be the same as agendas in Game of Thrones. So they're agendas like, so you know, you had your main kind of faction card, your main faction card, and then you could have an additional card which was an agenda. So the banners were agendas, but then there were other ones like there's the crossing, Reigns of Castamere, stuff like that. So anyway,
So it's basically your backlash deck.
it's the same basically. Not quite. No, it's not your backlash deck at all. It's it's completely different. Completely different.
Yeah, we're going back to senseis. It's going to give it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised it did it. I always felt that senseis were a dangerous place to go a lot of time in the old L5R. Generally, we saw strongholds being released at the base set, and then senseis were introduced, a few expansions down the line when the design team felt pretty confident about it. It'll be interesting to see what they have. But it's exciting because we know we've got one stronghold for each clan, and this will open up options. I think there was it 5? Yeah, there was 5 role cards in total. Yeah. So yeah, God, we'll have to see what they are.
One for every ring.
I don't know.
But in fairness,
maybe.
Yeah, FFG's approach to these kind of cards has been much more conservative than AEG's ever was. I mean, with AEG, they literally defined the deck that you built in like a completely overarching fashion. In an awful lot of cases, they fundamentally changed the deck that you were playing. Whereas with the FFG versions of cards, they're much more controlled by and large, and generally fairly heavily restricted. So they don't have the same range of effects that old senseis tended to have in 5 rings. So that's just as an observation from.
So no need to panic yet. No.
Not yet.
Yeah, I mean, from the design of the game in general, it seems like they're going to be a lot more, like Justin was saying, conservative. Because if they go down the route of what senseis used to do in old L5R, this could be a very, very different game. Because old senseis, some of them were completely just game warping completely.
Some of them were unplayable, but you don't remember any of those.
No. You only remember the ones like Hantai Sensei or what was it?
Good times. There was the Rattling Sensei, whatever that one was.
I can't remember.
No, but there was nothing like chuck into great white rat into great white rat into great white rat into another rat.
Yeah.
Well played. Turn 1.
What was the other? What was the sensei that was it? Goji? No, that was later on. Oh God! When they brought back Goji? No, it wasn't Goji Sensei. What was the sensei that they had in late Diamond, early Lotus? The political one that locked out a personality. Was that?
Oh yes. Oh, for God's sake! I wasn't playing much around that time. I got to say, because of cards like that.
Oh God! Gozoku Sensei. Gozoku Sensei. My God, that was such an environment to play in. Everybody else's sensei was absolute utter dog shit, and Gozoku Sensei was just dominating. You played Gozoku Sensei in military decks, for God's sake, even though you couldn't take the.
Yeah, Gozoku Crane with that duelist that challenged people as an open action and bowed.
Oh God. Wasn't that you?
Dark times. Dark times.
And there was that was also the arc where they removed Rallying Cry. Every military player's crutch.
That was a good idea, though.
Another little thing from this, I mean, I think we probably had our suspicions, but it's sort of saying out of the box play. So if you're playing from one core, minimum deck size of 30 cards. I think kind of essentially confirming that really to have playable decks you will need 2 cores, and I think we're increasingly seeing that 3 cores, if you want to play in tournaments, is what you're going to need to be running from.
And without bringing this up too much, I think if they put us in a position where we could buy just 1 core set and we had everything we needed, it would either be a really big core set or we'd have a fraction of the cards we have now. So I'm not unhappy with what they're doing, even if it does mean 30 cards.
Yeah.
The Gen Con tournament's going to be very interesting. From what we gather, from what we can tell, it's going to be one-offs for all of your clan cards. You're going to be playing 2 of those Zeppins, most likely. Not 0, 2. Because current speculation is that the online cards are going to be 2 each.
Enjoy, Justin.
So Justin, a first turn of Seppin, Atomo, Atomo.
That's a really good turn too. Wow.
Just chuck on some ornate fans and you're good to go.
No, chuck on 1, no 2.
Ornate
2
fans on the 7 guardsmen and the 5 towers on the atomic weapons.
So yeah, I think that tournament is probably going to be down to whoever has read the most cards and has worked out the most interactions and gets really lucky. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be fun.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit interested in the influence stuff, that you can only splash 1 single clan. I guess that makes sense. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if that was confirmed before this, but it was. Okay. Yeah, I think it is a good thing. It is a good thing.
Otherwise, it'd just be the same. You'd end up with the same kind of 3, 4, 5 cards in every single deck.
Yeah.
And
I think it makes it a little easier for designers, and also for the play. It's kind of exciting because as soon as you see that first card being played, that's out of plan for your opponent. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, well, they've got that. They've got this much influence left. It could be this, this, or this. Right? I'm not going to bow him because he's splashing in line cards and he's going to be ready for bow effects. I'm going to send him home instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Other things were when you switch rings in duels, the fate goes to the player.
Yeah.
This on the Facebook
we weren't
thing
before. That was quite surprising. I was quite surprised by that.
Which makes that Phoenix card a lot better, doesn't it?
No, it makes it
worse.
Makes it less good.
Because
we thought because it specifically mentioned it on that card that because it specifically mentioned that was not the general rule, but apparently it is the general rule.
And then what else?
It doesn't make the card worse. It just makes it comparatively not as good as
so
something
we've seen
that never existed.
Elemental Fury will let you switch, but that's the defender, so the attacker will get the honor.
And similarly, Morikuri, the Phoenix.
So I'm not sure we've seen any actual offensive ways of using it, so you could squeeze out some more honor. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem very strong if you can use it defensively, because if you can get, you can certainly consider you get 3, 4 fate, late game. If you've got the first conflict.
I think in general it would be a poor design for any clan or any deck to be able to, number one, put pressure on as an attacker, put lots of pressure on as an attacker, and be gaining a lot of honor at the same time. Like, fulfilling both win conditions simultaneously just is probably not the best design in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's worked for Lion for 20 years, so...
Well, no one said Lion was the best design in the world.
Okay, so I'd like to sort of, because we've been running a while, touch on Dragon Clan fiction. So, where to start? I guess kind of pretty interesting. A little bit of seeing some of the really key figures: Hitomi, Yukuni. I must confess, sort of Dragon in the old setting were kind of the the clan I sort of knew least about fiction-wise.
That's because they were the most boring clan in it. And I say that as a dragon player. The dragon were designed to sit in their mountains and have a kami. And then they took the kami away. And that was it.
But this fiction makes the dragon look awesome. So
kind of does. Yeah, it's
it really
a pretty good
does.
start.
It's all lies. All lies.
I thought this was a much better fiction than, well, not a much better, but I enjoyed this more.
Why is that?
On a personal level, than the lion or the crane, just because there was, it felt like the dragon actually had some genuine problems to overcome, like things that were not run of the mill. They had actual moral choices involved in what they were doing. I mean, with the crane and the lion, it was, the crane doing crane things and the lion doing lion things, which are generally pretty straightforward. But the dragon actually face, a genuine moral dilemma as to how they deal with the what was it, the perfect land sect. So
yeah.
it was much more interesting from that point of view for me.
And for the other two stories, we got to see it from the perspective of the clan champion, whereas in this story, we got to see it from the perspective of the Miyamoto daimyo, who was kind of going, so what am I doing, boss? What? I have no idea what he's saying. What do I do? So there's a little bit more of a mystery. You're not fully aware of what's going on in the dragon, and there's kind of a lot of things hinted, and there's threads. I think there's a lot of opportunity for stories to kind of feed out. Especially interested to see what's happening with Mitsu. Mitsu was a big fan favorite from back in the day and didn't really do that much, to be honest. But now it looks like he's smack in the center as the current heir to Yukuni, should anything go wrong, which is fun.
Yeah. And I saw a few sort of fan theories going around about where some of those threads may lead. In particular, the prophecy bit and what that could allude to. Is there any that you subscribe to, Justin?
No, I have to say, whenever I see prophecies now in fiction, I just switch off immediately. They're foreshadowing without the shadows. They're just terrible. I hate them. Just actually, because you very kindly put together some show notes, and I can actually read it here. I mean, a great way of rising up. It could be the Kumo. Who knows? It's prophecy. I just don't care.
It's the coming of the mantis.
No, it's not.
I know.
No, it's not.
That would be awesome, which is why it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd hand this right over to Baz because he's the dragon player, and it looks, he
just be honest, Justin. Be honest.
Like he's hopping around on the screen.
You're incandescent with rage at the inclusion of a prophecy in the story.
No,
you cannot. You're just passing it to Baz because you fear you can't contain your rage anymore.
That's right, Andy. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, but it's they're probably. I mean, the thing is as well that it's such a well-trod trope now in fiction that they are generally phrased so ambiguously, and filled chock full with this could be a metaphor, but it might not be. That they're essentially nonsensical. They're just like, it's basically just saying something crazy is going to happen. It might have something to do with some stuff.
Yeah. A good prophecy is designed to make you think it's one thing, and then when you get the reveal, look, if you look into the second paragraph under section 4,
it's all Delphic. It's all Delphic and shit.
Still exciting.
As I said,
I mean, it does suggest big change and exciting things for the Empire. But we've got a storyline. That's what happens in storylines.
Exactly. But like I said, I'm from that fiction. I am far more interested in why the dragon population is declining the way it is. I'm really interested to find out more about the Perfect Land sect. And just the characters were a lot more interesting. I mean, it doesn't seem like Yukuni is necessarily is necessarily a kami. I mean, he might be, but the fact that he's having epileptic fits means that maybe he's not exactly what he was in the original story.
Yeah, can you maybe just elaborate on that for people who are not familiar with it?
Oh yeah, okay. So basically, in the story, so the Miramoto daimyo has to make an annual report to the dragon to Yakuni, the Dragon Clan champion, and so he travels to the House of Highlight, which is way up in the mountains, and he goes before Yakuni, makes his report. Yakuni speaks fairly diffidently, seems generally uninterested or disinterested about what he's being told. But then he goes into, well, further on in the fiction, he goes into a fit during which he comes up with this prophecy. But the fit is described very much as an epileptic fit. It's described very much in the way that you would imagine that. And epilepsy actually has a long history in various cultures of being associated with prophecy and with, essentially divine beings or spiritual beings speaking through a mortal vessel. So there's an implication that Yakuni may not be actual Kami.
For the new players, explain what the old story was.
When you say he might not be what he appears to be, or what he was.
So in the very old story, in the original story, Yakuni was an actual living dragon. He was the Kami, was the original founder of the Dragon Clan, who was still alive after over 1,000 years, where all the other Kami, the original founders of the clans, had died or disappeared or just vanished off the face of rock again in some way or another. Yakuni was still there, essentially pulling the strings in hidden ways and directing the course of the empire through mysterious machinations, because that was basically the dragon things. They apparently did nothing, but did everything. Very doused. So Yakuni was an actual god in the original version of Five Rings in the AEG version, but in this, the implication is, so far at least, that he might not be. So that would be quite a significant change. It would be a huge change. It would be an absolutely massive change for the character, and that's reinforced by the fact that Mitsu is considered the heir. Because they made a significant point of Mitsu being the heir in the fiction, and it seems odd to point that out. So that's basically it. So Yakuni may not be the Kami, the literal god that he was in the AEG story. He may just be a mortal who has inherited the spirit of Yakuni in much the same, through whom Yakuni speaks, in much the same way that the Phoenix Clan champion used to inherit the souls of all the previous Phoenix Clan champions. So we'll see if that's the case with the Phoenix, I'm sure. But anyway, I've talked for a long time, so somebody else.
And also Miramoto Masahagi, who is the character we kind of saw through, was named as the Miramoto daimyo, which is brand new. He was not in the old story. In the old story, originally it was Miramoto Shosan, who was the father of Hitomi, Dani, and Satsu. And then by the time we kind of get into the story, Satsu has already been killed, and Miramoto Sukune, who had a horse, yay! Which I assume, it was the only one I remember with a horse, but I assume it got eaten eventually, because that's what happened to horses in the mountains. Had taken over because the Miramoto Shosan had gone into retirement after Satsu had died. We have confirmation that Satsu, or Hitomi's brother, has died. So we're assuming again that story is in there some way. I
really hope so.
For those who aren't familiar, there was some crab oaf who history doesn't really record the name of, who dueled Satsu and basically clubbed him to death. Again, it's one of these machinations where the duel was in place, and Togashi Yakuni, the Dragon Clan champion, comes and says to Satsu, "This is an important guy. You better not kill him." So Satsu throws the duel that he should have won, and some jabroni called Yukamo just struts out of there. Yeah, but I mean the backstory for that is he's vaguely significant in some manner or form. I don't quite remember the details, but that's a drive for Hitomi, and she becomes this fantastic creature that we won't dwell on too much.
Vengeful, spiteful, driven, vicious, competent.
All the
Amazing.
best qualities.
Yeah, absolutely. And then she got completely ruined later on in the story. But
And then became the moon.
never mind.
Good times.
But she was
times.
amazing. Oh no, and she was amazing in this story as well, because she showed the exact same focus, concentration, dedication to duty. She was amazing.
What's that Matsu? The Matsu that was in the story?
Tsuko, Mad Dog Tsuko.
Yeah, basically in this story, Hitomi is Tsuko, but competent. Still the same drive, still the same anger and fury, but contained and obedient. Which, I was really happy to see that. Now, I wouldn't be particularly upset if the Hitomi story doesn't go anywhere and she's just this cool character, because, that's fine. But she's looking
basically
very good.
Ventress. She's like Sith. She's just the hyper-focused, hyper-competent bad person. And Matsuko has rabies.
Yeah, I mean, she seems to be one of the most meaningful characters to Dragon players, though. Okay, so I think it's probably a good place to wrap it up. I think we're hitting an hour and a half sort of time. Unless there's any other stuff you guys want to jump onto.
I think we're good.
Okay, awesome.
I'll tell you guys about the secret original Dragon story that never got revealed later.
Oh, you can dip into that.
It's a secret. It's a secret column. Jesus Christ, weren't you listening? Weren't you paying attention?
So it's just me and our thousands of listeners.
He'll keep telling us about the secret every week.
Yeah,
so that,
just tease it. Just tune in next time for the secret Dragon story ever.
Don't know. I mean, I don't think it's too much of a big secret. Basically, from interrogating.
Don't tell him, Baz.
From interrogating a couple of the old storyline players way back in the day, I managed to get a bit of an outline of what would have happened if things hadn't been messed with. So for those who aren't familiar, yes, the
HDM. I'll say it, so you don't have to, Baz.
No. See, this is a misunderstanding. The HDM did a thing, but what they did, and the reason people were angry at them, is totally different for now. But the way the story originally was envisioned to go down was that Yakuni was dead, was out of the way, that Hitomi took over and was full of this anger and fury, and there was this friendly monk advisor she had called, what was the name? Kakujin, I think, something like that. And Kakujin gave some excellent advice, but apparently the plan was originally he was going to kill her. Kakujin was going to kill Hitomi and then take over as the daimyo of the Dragon Clan. Because
I thought he couldn't get any cooler, he just does.
He was invested with all of the awesomeness of Yakuni from back in the day. And then you were going to have a Shadowlands in the north, as well as a Shadowlands in the south. Two terrifying things at either side of the Empire to totally make a mess of everyone else. And now, what the Dragon, the Honorable Dragon players were doing was controversial. What they were trying to do is they were trying to keep the dragon honorable. They didn't actually particularly care about Hitomi, from what I can tell. Again, I mean, I've chatted with a lot of these guys from back in the day, and they were all super nice guys. A lot of them were more corrupt than many might expect. They were not polished golds, and they were not super honorable kind of Crane-esque players. But they didn't want the entire clan to fall down just because one thing was going bad. What was controversial about them is they never won any tournaments, but they took a stand and they refused to play to play corrupt cards, no matter how many were pushed their direction. And because of that, the storyline team leads looked at that and went, okay, yeah, maybe we'll change things slightly. Now, looking back, that Dark Empire in the North, that would have been awesome. And, if any of the current storyline players or the team are listening, that could still happen. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, that's what the old story was due to be. They took a very different direction, and a lot of exciting things happened, and I was delighted with what happened. But hearing what the original potential was very cool.
You know what else is awesome? Winning tournaments.
At
whatever cost.
But nowadays, or near the end, there was a lot more engagement with the player base in ways that didn't involve winning tournaments, and that was very exciting. And I think the HDM kind of got a bad rep because a lot of people didn't understand what was happening or why people were annoyed with them. But I think, personally, I think they contributed a lot to the long-term health of the game and why L5R became so exciting, because people cared, and they cared a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need heels. You need faces and heels, and sometimes heels act out of the very best of intentions. And in fairness, it would have been pretty bad to see the entire Dragon Clan go down, because as much as I look down on them and despise them in many, many ways,
it didn't seem to negatively impact the Phoenix at any point on the several occasions that they went down.
Well, no, actually, that's not true. If you played at the start of Jade, I remember playing a Phoenix deck that had.
Oh, hold on. Are you saying that there was a 1 week period in which being a Phoenix player was bad?
1 week. That was a long time. Jesus, I remember playing. Remember the.
Don't forget, you're saying this to a Dragon player, okay?
I know. I understand that, which is delicious. But in fairness, at Mahage, that was the first global storyline tournament. My Phoenix deck, I played every single legal Phoenix personality in the environment, which amounted to 3 Shibutsukune basic, 1 Shibutsukune XP, 1 Narakazu, and 1 Asugi. So I had a grand total of six Phoenix personalities. That was all I could play. That was all that existed in a deck that played 19 events. Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. But we got better.
In this new environment, I'm trying really hard to say to myself that I'm not a Dragon player. I'm just going to play what's fun and what's out there, and I'm going to enjoy it. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, and then you have to go look at the Agasha, and you're like, oh, that's a nice family you got there. Shame if something happened to them.
It would be a shame if you lost it. And Agasha Genai was a very good personality. That dude, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Oh yeah, so good. That's how it goes.
All
right,
I know.
Let's call it there. All right, thanks guys for joining us. Thanks for tuning in and chatting and contributing all the chat. We might be back during the week with the Dragon are revealed. We probably will. There's a good chance we'll do it on Wednesday. Baz, you're in the States, so I don't know if you're able to join or not.
I'll find out on the day.
Cool. But that's kind of, we'll put up on Twitter and Facebook as and when it kind of real life can get in the way of those sort of spontaneous things. So, but yeah, we'll definitely get that in, and it'll be up on YouTube if you miss it live. So that's the plan. Thanks to the guys. Thanks for the chat, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Tinder, Grindr, anywhere you can find us. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in.